So welcome back. This is webinar number 2 in a series of free webinars that we'll be presenting from Her Life, Her Legacy. And tonight we're going to be talking about how to get what you really, really, really want. And I'm so excited because I'm actually co-teaching tonight with Miss Jordan Hales of presidentialpurpose.com. And as promised, for those of you who are getting the Her Life, Her Legacy updates, I am giving away 3 copies of my book. And the first copy is actually going out to Mr. Jason, I don't want to butcher your last name, Mr. Jason Langer, for being the first one on the webinar tonight. So congratulations, and I will be mailing a copy of that to you guys. So for those of you who were here last time, you know how this works. Jason says, yeah, thanks. That's right. All right, so cool. I'm going to get started by telling those of you, because for some of you this might be your first webinar. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and again, at any point in time, feel free to type in the chat box, and I will do my best to read your comments. We try to get some participation going. At some point, I might unmute some of you so you'll have an opportunity to talk, but I'm excited to get started. So here we go. And again, for those of you who are just logging on, there is a worksheet that goes along with tonight's webinar, just like the last one, but if you do not have it, do not worry. You're going to get the complete answer guide. So we'll address that again as we go through this. But like last time, we're going to move pretty quick. And if you have questions, we'll definitely save some time at the end, but I'll also be trying to keep up through the chat box. So here we go. Who's that? That's me. As I mentioned, I'm Teresa Campbell. I'm actually the founder of HerLifeHerLegacy.com. And as many of you know, the host of the Let's Talk Legacy podcast. And I wanted to tell you just a little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know me, I graduated and got my marketing degree from Michigan State University, immediately started working in marketing and sales at Ford Motor Company, and then decided to go ahead and get a master's in business administration at night from the Rollins Crummer Graduate School of Business. I met that handsome guy in the bottom right corner of the screen, Mr. Craig Campbell, my husband, and then we had our first child, Luke, and Luke is our only child at this point in time. But my whole life changed probably, I would say, 3 years ago when my leadership professor asked me the question, what is your purpose? And it looks like Doug made a little comment here that if you enroll again, you can actually go download the packet. Thank you, Doug. All right, so what is your purpose? This was the question. This was the question that started everything. There would not be Her Life, Her Legacy if it wasn't for this question being posed of me. And after some time, I discovered that my purpose is actually to inspire others to chase their potential and live an extraordinary life. And many of you may have heard this story before, so as you know, I immediately dove straight into becoming an author, speaker, podcast host, and a coach. And everything was beautiful, and I was running around doing speaking engagements, and yeah, that's really not how it happened. A lot of you might know, if you've heard my story before, that I had my lovely Tom Cruise Dark Night of the Soul, had a breakdown, and realized that if I was really going to live on purpose, if I was really going to live this life of passion and purpose where I'm inspiring others to live an extraordinary life, I was going to have to work on some things. The first of which being realizing that there were some golden handcuffs. And this wasn't an easy period in my life, because from the outside looking in, with that handsome guy that you saw on the slide before and that beautiful dog and all these degrees and the cars and all this stuff on the outside looking fabulous, I was definitely not fulfilled on the inside. And day by day, step by step, I started taking the steps to build and start to create the life that I have today. And that's what this is really about. So me as the author, the speaker, the coach, and the podcast host, all of that was done little by little, day by day, as well as rocking the fundamentals, which we're going to be talking about tonight. But really what this is all about is legacy. And again, now all of my work is centered around this one word of legacy, and my purpose is also to give each of you access to this word. And no longer is this word reserved for historical figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, or Martin Luther King, because I truly believe that if each of us thought about the legacy that we wanted to leave as well as live, on a daily basis, that would change our entire world. It would actually dictate how we showed up every single day. If we knew how we really wanted to be remembered, and if we actually started thinking about a legacy as being something that we can leave in every moment of every single day, that's going to change how you show up in the world, from everything you eat to how you treat the guy at the grocery store, the person who cuts you off in traffic, all of it. And that's why tonight, when we start talking about, well, how is it that we get what we really, really, really want? How do we live this life of passion and purpose and go out there and leave our legacy? I started thinking, who else do I know that's also living on purpose? And ta-da, that's why Jordan Hales of Presidential Purpose will be joining us tonight. And I want to tell you just a little bit about Jordan, because now that I've told you just a little bit about myself, it's important for you to know who the other teacher is tonight, because I'm actually not going to do very much of the talking. I'll have some things to contribute, but Jordan is amazing. She's absolutely brilliant, and I'm just going to read a little bit of her bio to you guys right now. And if that sounds good, just let me know in the chat box and say sounds good, so I know you guys are still with me. All right, sounds good. Sounds good, sounds good, sounds good. All right, you guys are fantastic. So Jordan believes that Jordan says, imagine a world where presidential is a right extended to the people, not just the president. Where people believe that it's advantageous to be presidential, even though their names may never be on a ballot. That's the idea that Jordan Hales is exploring at presidentialpurpose.com, which is a 4-year journey for Jordan to graduate with the president in 2017. Jordan is a native of Mobile, Alabama. She believes in whole brain thinking, idea trafficking, self-expression, as well as innovation. Jordan was accepted into Harvard, Yale, MIT, Stanford, and Dartmouth. She's written a book, developed an innovative method of language learning, and runs her own business. And above all else, Jordan believes in making mistakes, committing to lifelong learning, and doing something that scares you as often as possible. So when I thought about the fundamentals, and Jordan actually contacted me because this is a topic, the fundamentals, that we've been talking about offline for quite some time. And this really is, we're here together tonight to teach you how to get what you really, really, really want. And the secret to that really and truly is the fundamentals. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Actually, I'll save that story to the end because I promised those of you who were on the last webinar that I was going to explain what this statue was all about. So if you guys know who that is, tell me who it is in the chat box. If anybody knows who this guy is and why we're looking at these socks. Okay, Doug knows. It's Coach John Wooden. Very good. So here's the thing. John Wooden was... Doug says, oh yeah, it was incredible. And his teaching methods were totally unconventional. He was the most winningest coach at UCLA. And I love the story that's often told about him when it comes down to the fundamentals. Because if you listen carefully, this is truly how you get what you really, really, really want. And I love the story of the first day of basketball practice with any of the new teams that he started coaching, and the teammates and the players would come in and they wanted to know what secrets of the game they were going to get, and what were the strategies for winning, and how were they going to learn this from the most this famous coach, and what were they going to teach on, what was he going to teach them on day one. And it was so hilarious because Coach Wooden would have them come into the locker room and he would say, all right, please take off your socks and your shoes. Take off your shoes and socks. And he said, this is going to be our first practice for today. And they'd all be sitting in the locker room looking at each other like, what do you mean take off our shoes and socks? And he said, I'm going to show you the proper way to put them back on. And all the new players kind of looked at each other in disbelief. And there were other players who'd been through this before, a few years before. And they were looking at the new guys, and the new guys were looking like, is this guy crazy? Why are we taking off our socks and shoes? This is ridiculous. Like, when are we going to get on the court? And John would say, okay, now when you pull on your sock, I want you to make sure that there are no wrinkles or gaps. and they would each start to pull on their socks, and he said, okay, and make sure your heel is, make sure the heel is full and seated at the heel of the sock, and run your hand over the toes, and make sure it's, just smooth out any bumpy areas of this sock. And they would start, rubbing their socks and smoothing them over their feet, and then he showed each player how to properly lace up their shoes, which I think is hilarious. Like, these guys have probably been tying their shoes since they were like, little kids, but he's like, this is how you properly tie your shoe, and this is how you make the knot, and if you do this right, your socks aren't going to bunch up. And they would be in the locker room doing this, and this was like the first lesson, and then he wouldn't say anything, and the players would look at each other like, okay, what's happening, what are we going to do? And then he would actually turn around and tell them, this is your first practice, and then he would say, you see, if there were wrinkles in your socks or your shoes weren't tied properly, then you're going to develop blisters. And with blisters, you're going to miss practice. And if you miss practice, you don't get to play. And if you don't play, we cannot win. And if you want to win championships, you must take care of the smallest details. And then he walked away and was like, practice is over. And some people probably, Doug says, oh man, that was deep. Exactly. So if we really break this down, this is really about the fundamentals. This is taking care of those little things that so many times we don't even pay attention to, that over time end up making the biggest difference in our lives. And I love this chart on the next slide. I stole it out of Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect. And it's basically, it says, your choices matter. So small, smart choices plus consistency plus time make the biggest difference. And the thing that I want to bring your attention to on this chart, if you look at the left-hand side, it shows the results, your income, your health, your relationships, your happiness, your success. And if you look at the time, you've got your choices, you've got a behavior, and then you've got habits, right? And if we think about those socks and shoes, you could make the right choice to smooth out your socks and lace up your shoes appropriately every single day, and you might not realize how that's going to pay off in the end, but you can become a champion. You can be the guy at the top where this chart splits and the guys at the top. Or you can just kind of, go through life and not really pay attention to any of your habits, not really do anything different, and just stay the same. Or you can make really bad choices consistently over time and end up with less money, really bad health, unhappy in your relationships, unhappy in general, and not successful. So what we're going to talk about tonight, what Jordan is really going to teach you, is really how to get what you really, really, really want. And the story I want to share with you, or I'm going to share with you at the end, it all came to me last summer, and I showed up at church on a Sunday, and I went up to my friend Miss Charlotte, and I said, Miss Charlotte, I figured out the secret to success. And Jordan and I are going to take you through that tonight, because you are going to learn not just about how to put your socks and shoes on, but that's a wonderful metaphor for what the fundamentals are. But we're going to dive into what a fundamental truly is, why consistency on the fundamentals is key. If we think about that last chart that showed the consistent good behavior, bad behavior, or neutral, and what can happen over time. We're also going to talk about how to discover your core fundamentals, what to do when you don't think you have the time or the energy, why they're not just about diet and exercise, and we're going to also share some of the fundamentals of the world's most successful people, which I'm super excited about. Again, if you don't have the worksheet in front of you, please do not worry. We mentioned that just like last time, we're going to give you the answer keys. So we'll send out both the fill in the blank version, because there will be an opportunity for you to also answer some questions tonight, but then we'll also give you the comprehensive guide so you guys won't be missing a thing. But the main question when it comes down to getting what you really, really, really want is, who do I have to become? If I'm going to transition from being the marketing and sales professional to the author, speaker, and coach, who does Coach T have to become? Who does Jordan have to become to graduate with the president? What does it mean for her to make X number of promises to herself, right, and live with passion and purpose on a daily basis? So who do we have to become? in order to get what we really, really want. And the magic question is, and this is where we want you to pay a lot of attention, is what are the things that you know you need to be doing on a consistent basis to show up as the highest version of yourself? Not just the normal person that goes through life day to day, but the highest version of yourself, the best version of yourself. And at the end, like I said, I'm going to talk about what I did personally to be able to show up at church the next day and explain to Miss Charlotte when I figured all of this out. And I seriously wanted to cry because it was one of those moments where diligently, patiently, persistently for a few years, it took me to figure it out. And that's the beauty of this course. Like, we don't want you to go through a few years. We want you to start practicing these things today. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Jordan, and she is going to pick up where I left off. So if you guys are ready to hear from Miss Hales of presidentialpurpose.com, type in the chat box, "Let's go, Jordan." All right, Doug's ready. You guys are awesome. All right, so all right, this is awesome. Everybody is on board, and I don't know, let's see if I can change the presenter. And make a presenter, here we go, and I'm turning it over to Jordan. All right, Jordan, you should be all
Guys,
set.
can you hear me? Can you hear me, Teresa? Am I in the house?
I can hear you. You're in the house.
All right, great. We're going to get my slides up so you can see me, or at least my slides. Almost there. All righty. Wow, what a wonderful introduction. I'm so incredibly excited to be here. I wish you could see my face. I'm known for the most ridiculous facial expressions, and I'm doing a lot of them right now because I'm happy to be here. Like Teresa said, my name is Jordan Hales, and I'm excited to be in this safe space that Teresa is creating for people to really say, okay, what's going on? Where am I now? Where do I want to be? And what do I have to do? Like, honestly, what's going on? How can I make that movement forward? And I'm going to take some time to share some things that are pretty personal to me. And hopefully, as you all are going through with your pen and your paper or the worksheet and the slides, you can really take the time to be in your safe space and think about some of the things that we're talking about in a really open and honest way. A bit about presidential purpose. I love the fact that presidential purpose is about gaining access to this word presidential, just like legacy, her life, her legacy is about gaining access to the word legacy. And both of those words are really asking the question, how do I want to show up in the world? And in order to really have the conversation about why I care about the fundamentals so much, I have to go back to presidential purpose and the question that changed my life. And it happened on election night, and it was really simple. I said, if I were running to be president of my own nation of one, would I get my own vote? And at that point in time, in that moment, the answer was no. I couldn't even get my own vote right now to be president of my own nation of one. So I had to make some changes. I had experienced a lot of success in my life before then, and I really wanted to do bigger and better things. The problem was that I wasn't healthy. I was feeling a strong sense of fatigue. I was feeling not the amounts of clarity that I had beforehand. I didn't have the focus. I really didn't even have the hope. I didn't know where I was going to go, right? And when I thought about presidential purpose, it reactivated in me, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to change this, right? So I'm going to go to the next slide. And it's going to talk about some of the things that I have done over time, not all of them, to start to change my life. You see the yoga, you see the juices, you see the pen for the writing, you see 30-day challenges. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the yoga because I think it is one of the best examples of fundamentals in my own experience that I've ever found. The yoga is not just any yoga, it's Bikram yoga. That means that right now I'm going to take you metaphorically, into a room that's 105 degrees hot on purpose, that is humid on purpose. This is a space where you have nothing but a yoga mat and a towel. You don't even have jewelry. You don't have your cell phone. You don't have your credit card. You just have the heat, and you have your own mind and reflection in the mirror. The powerful thing about Bikram yoga is that you can't show up in 105-degree heat after eating McDonald's. You can't show up in 105-degree heat if you haven't drunk enough water. You will fall out. It is guaranteed. You can't show up in the room even if you don't show up on time, because Bikram yoga is very strict. So you have to make sure that you're properly allocating for this 90-minute class. It's not a 30-minute class, not a 60-minute class. It's a 90-minute class, and at the end of it, they're going to ask you to sit in a final posture and just be. When you're doing Bikram yoga, you can't help but to touch on all these different other parts of your life that are key and fundamental. It reminds me of something that in Charles Duhigg's book he described as keystone habits. These are habits that when you touch on them, they touch on every single thing in your life. So Bikram has changed my life. Bikram is something that's always been a rejuvenating force to help me to get back on track, as was vegetable juicing, which totally changed my view of how I was going to consume food and what I was going to put into my body. Writing, I've recently started a 1,000 word per day writing challenge. It helps amazingly with clarity and with self-expression. I've been doing it consistently since about the top to the middle of December, and it's had unbelievable effects on my life. 30-day challenges I have, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of consistency, but when I do the yoga, I typically do it in 30-day challenges. When I do the juicing, I typically do it in challenges, and we'll talk about that. But this is why I'm passionate about it. I have been in places that were really dark and in places that were really hot, and the fundamentals were the only things that got me through. Alrighty, so let's get started. In order to get what I really, really, really want, do I have to just have a magic genie? Is that the only thing that's going to get me from point A to point B? Luckily, no. Am I going to need a to-do list? Am I going to need to ask myself, what do I need to do? A lot of times that's our first question. It's a good question, but it's not the best question to ask. As Teresa pointed out, the best question for you to ask when you really want to get what you really, really want is, who do I need to become? And the key to that, I think, is, as Deepak Chopra pointed out in one of his excellent videos on YouTube, and I'll have to link to that in the guide, he talks about how being is the fundamental of everything. It's not just about our actions. Our actions are a product of our being, and our being, our highest selves. And that ultimately is the answer to the question. If I'm going to get what I really want, who do I need to be? I need to be the absolute best version of myself. If you are feeling being the best version of yourself, take yourself to that point. What's your energy like? What does the best version of yourself do? Give me a high five in the chat box if the best version of yourself is the version that you actually want to be. I won't be able to see it, so we're just going to go on the honor code to see if you can do it. All right?
I can tell you what they said.
All right.
High five, girlfriend.
High five, girlfriend. All right.
All right, let's see. Max says yes. High five, high five. This is great. Brooke says high five. Awesome.
Good, 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 good. So yeah, you know, the absolute version of yourself is the magic genie, because it has access to something that the neutral version of yourself and the worst version of yourself doesn't have. And this isn't the perfect version of yourself. This is the highest human version of you, right? But think about life as a sort of interface and a door, right? That you can put your hands on, that you can feel, right? You can push into it, and you can also receive from it. When you're at the absolute best version of yourself, not only can you get more out of life, you can also give more. This is what sets us up to leave a legacy. This is what sets us up to go and get coaching and actually get more out of it, because we tried our hardest to be the best versions of ourselves. So let's do this. Let's figure this out. How do I become that person? Is there a step-by-step path? That's the question that I had 5 years ago, predating presidential purpose, when I really was thinking, man, what am I going to do to change my life? There is a step-by-step path. I wish I had known the step-by-step formula then, but I didn't. It's taken me several years to get to what Teresa and I call the in the trenches position, but we're here today, and what I plan on doing during this webinar is giving you the 20% of things that can get you 80% of the results. There may be some things you might have thought of beforehand, but we're going to be very purposeful about them today. This is the stuff that I wish I had known beforehand that would have saved me a lot of time. I really like this path, by the way. It's really beautiful green, and that's where we're going, to a beautiful space. All right, let's define these fundamentals. These are the things that help us, that are the step-by-step path.
Doug and I like the odds, by the way, just so you know. I'll be quiet.
What is it that you like?
The odds, the 20% of the things we need to do to get 80% of the results. Boom.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Boom.
I'm going back on mute. Sorry.
All righty. No, not a problem. So the fundamentals, we go back to the dictionary to define the fundamentals. And it gets a little bit wordy here, but I think they have some merit here. We're looking at something that serves as the original or generating source, something that is serving as a basis, supporting existence, or determining essential structure or function. If we get less wordy and just focus on some of the highlights, we're looking at origin, generating, source, supporting, determining, essential. I love these words because of the pictures that they create. The origin is where we go first. I think of a spring or a fountain. This is the place from which the water arises and has movement and has life, the type of things that we would have if we were at our best versions of ourselves, right? Generating, it is the cause. It is what's propelling everything. Supporting existence. This is what gives us the foundation to handle the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows, because we have to have something that keeps us in balance at all times, no matter if we're in that low point or if we're in that high point. Let's translate this into something that's a little bit more basic and down to earth. The fundamentals are those things you need to do on a daily basis in order to show up as the best version of yourself. They support your ideal existence so you can get exactly what you want. That is something that's really powerful. Teresa came up with that phrase, ideal existence, and I have hung on to it ever since she said it. Think about that for a moment. What happens during your ideal existence? All right. So we're moving forward with these fundamentals. We got to learn how to treat them. If they're the source, if they're the generator, if they're what's supporting us, then they're sacred. How do we treat our fundamentals? We have to treat them sacred, as sacred things, and also with intention. What does that really mean? It means that in the beginning of my journey, instead of me thinking, oh yeah, I'm feeling bad, and I've got to do diet, and I got to do exercise, which is really very generic, it means that I would have realized that the fundamentals are a thing. They are a thing that the most successful people do in the world, most successful people in the world do, rather, in order to be the best people that they can be, in order to do the biggest of the biggest things that they're going to do. This is on purpose. It's a tool. So it means it's a set of things that you do with intention, not just haphazardly with some fuzzy goal. And I love how, and I don't have this on the slides, but Teresa always says, your feelings follow your actions. It's not the other way around. That's on your worksheet. It's really key. These fundamentals are done with intention and they're done with action. And the actions are really going to affect how you ultimately feel. So what if you're in the phase of just discovering your fundamentals? What if you're at the beginning parts? Some of you may know what your fundamentals are. This will help you to help others to discover their fundamentals. Others of you may not. 5 years ago, I was clueless. I didn't know. Of course, we start with the big three. Exercise, diet. Actually, we'll start with the big twos that show here. But what happens when we get stuck there? What happens when we think that it's just about eating healthy and moving around? What happens is that we lose the intention, right? We lose the intention of understanding that we have to get really specific to understanding ourselves and how we need to exercise and what forms, what effects that has on us, how we need to eat, how that affects us, very specifically in order to achieve our fundamentals. So it goes beyond that, as you'll see here. The fundamentals, more than diet and exercise. The big three now is complete, and the third one is mindfulness training. What's interesting is that out of all of the fundamentals, some of the top people in the world, think your Oprahs, think your Ariana Huffingtons, think CEOs of almost any major company that you can think of, the key thing that they do is they meditate. They meditate because the meditation is one of those things that you get in a place like a Bikram yoga that helps to affect every single other thing. Most importantly, it builds the awareness that you need if you're just discovering your fundamentals. You have to be able to listen into your mind to say, oh, that made me feel like a boss. Or, oh, that's not something that I'm going to let happen again because I really didn't feel well after that happened. So you got to go beyond the exercise and the diet into the mindfulness training. Additionally, it's more than just the meditation. It can be about setting boundaries. You know, I'm going to say that this is what I'm going to do, and when people intrude on these boundaries, I'm not going to let them. And that's part of my fundamentals because that helps me feel good about myself. It could be that I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy myself a great set of clothes because when I need to be on camera, when I need to show up my best, I don't need to be thinking about what I need to wear or whether or not I have something in my closet. So I don't care what I have to do to find a fundamental set of bomb clothes in order to show up as my best self, but I'm going to go ahead and do that because that's important. That's fundamental. So don't just think about it as what most health experts say. It's more than that. All right, now it's time to go deeper. We're going to take a little bit of action. We're not going to have as much time today as I would like to really go fully there. But like Teresa said, you're going to have a deeper guide that we're going to give you. And also, you're going to have, you know, all of your life to go forward with this.
Hey, Jordan.
But this is our first exercise. Yeah.
Brooke has a question. She wants to know if mindfulness training any type of personal reflection like prayer, for example?
That's a good question. I would have to say that prayer is one of those things that definitely is a part of mindfulness training, where you get the difference between the prayer and the meditation typically is that instead of having a conversation, you're only in listening mode, if that makes sense at all.
I've heard it where people say prayer is talking to God, or right, and meditation is listening. So Brooke says yes.
But I would definitely say that for a lot of people, if you already have the habit of prayer, then prayer is a great way to segue into meditation because you're already assuming the postures that are necessary to get into the mindfulness state. So that's a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty, so let's discover some fundamentals. All right, I'm going to take you to a place that's a little bit dark, and hopefully this is safe enough for you to go there. If you can't go there right now, that's fine, but I encourage you to. Let's think about a time in your life when you were at your worst. Things were bad. Things were not good. This is not how I want to show up in the world. This is not my legacy self. This is not my presidential self. Think about what were you doing or what was going on that contributed to that breakdown. Specifically, we're not going to list out all the millions of things that were going wrong. All right, we're just going to do 5. But for a moment of comedic relief, we have this person here in their worst state who poured their cereal into the bowl without checking to see if it had any milk, and they didn't have any milk. All right, so everybody has their worst state. It comes in a lot of different forms. All right, so let's go to your top 5. The 5 things that were going on when you were at your worst. All right, give you some time, probably about 30 seconds. Just jot some stuff down. Now be quiet for a moment. Now, if you're writing these down and you're getting stuck, that's okay. One of the things that you can do is you can do the 5 whys exercise that a lot of business people do, and that is the very reason why the guy who was the main character in Teresa's story knew that how you put on your socks is important. You take the situation where you are and you ask yourself 5 times, why is this the case? And that's what helps you get to those fundamentals.
Can I see if anyone wants to share, like, when you were, if you don't mind, I know this is a dark, scary place, but go ahead and list something in the chat box. When you think about when you were at your worst, like, what were you doing, or what were you doing that was not serving you? If you don't mind sharing, I'll start. I know when I haven't been the best of myself, I wasn't eating well. We've got no financial security, so maybe not watching our pennies. I was hungry, I was tired, I was in my head too much, not sleeping enough. These are all really, really good. Yeah, like hungry and tired, bad. In the wrong relationship, not eating well and exercising, and letting work stress take over my life. Yeah, I don't talk to people before lunchtime for a reason. Closed off feelings, too much drinking, true that, taking things, that was somebody else, not me saying too much drinking, taking things personally, being overly social, no me time. Yeah, this is awesome.
This is awesome. And the key to unlocking each of those things is then you take that thing and you ask why. Why was I drinking too much? Why was I in my head too much? Boy, I know about being in your head too much. I know about that. Always ask yourself why and go 5 times and you'll get to the root problem. You'll get to the socks.
Why was I so tired?
Why was I so tired?
Tired over here. Go ahead.
Are we good? Have we gotten it out?
Yep, I'm going back on mute. Thank you.
All right. All right, now we're going to go positive. Can you guys still hear me? Hopefully you can. We're going to go back positive. Let's think about a time in your life when you were at your best. You were working it out. You were creating legacies. You were stepping into your life in a presidential way. What was going on then? What was happening? Go ahead again and list your top 5. Ask yourself why. And another thing, and then I'll shut up after this to give you at least a few seconds to think about this, it's not always something that you were doing. It could be something that was in your environment. Something that was in your environment that you caused, or something that was in your environment that you didn't cause, that sets you up for success or for failure. All right, I'll give you some time. All right, Teresa, if you got any responses that are coming in the chat box, let me know.
Okay. When life was working well, what was going on? All right, let's see. I was active in my regular mastermind. I was confident. Exercising. As we wait for a couple more. Furthering my education. Whoa, 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 now we're going faster. I was meditating daily outside. I was having a morning smoothie. I was working on my personal development. I was serving others.
These are awesome.
I was taking action.
Absolutely.
These are good. Okay.
These are good.
I'm going back on mute. Thank you.
All right. These are good. This is what you're doing when you're at your highest self. And this is the energy that we've got to preserve. We've got to keep this energy right there, accessible at all times. Again, the 5 whys exercise will help you get to the bottom of why you were doing those things that were helping you to be a success. Why were you regularly attending your mastermind group? Why? You know, why was it that you were exercising then? What set you up for success? Now the next thing that we have to do, and keep in mind those questions that we ask, they're not just questions for this moment in time. A question is not meant to facilitate an easy, quick answer. It's meant to activate your consciousness. It's meant to activate that mindfulness so that as you're going throughout the day, you're remembering and you're noting. Keep that in mind. Our next thing is that we're going to prioritize our fundamentals. Why? The priorities help us understand what are we going to do first. If nothing else in my fundamentals gets done today, what is the single most important thing that I need to do, right? Because life happens. And it's important that you understand all of these fundamentals so that you can say, okay, today I don't have the clarity, I need to do this. For me, if I don't have the clarity, then I need to make sure I have a vegetable juice on hand, period and point blank, right? If I don't feel centered, then I know, oh, I got to go to my Bikram yoga. But that requires that I understand the benefits of each of my fundamentals, right? So I'm going to give you probably around 20 seconds. Just going to want to be mindful of the time to consider the benefits of each of your fundamentals. For this one, go to the things that made you feel your best and consider the benefits of those. As you're considering those benefits, ultimately, look at which one hits you square dead in the middle of your life and makes you the most centered, brings you the greatest thing. This might be a keystone habit like I was talking about earlier with the Bikram yoga. It just starts to set up everything else for success in a big way. Go ahead and write down your number one fundamental. Now here's something that's important, and this is why consistency is so important on the fundamentals. I asked you to analyze the benefits of the fundamentals, but in reality, unless you have gone through a period of consistency with those fundamentals, you don't really know what the true benefits are. You have an idea, but you don't really know what they are. That's the magic. That's where those 30-day challenges come in for me. And it might not be a 30-day challenge off the bat if you were starting something new. It might be a 10-day challenge. But you have to get that momentum going and that back-to-back-to-back action to see what is this really about. What does standing up for myself really look like? How does that make me feel? How does that serve as a fundamental? What does going to my church make me feel like on a regular basis? What does going and hitting the pavement and running make me feel like on a regular basis, truly? All right, we talked about prioritizing, and we're getting to the most important parts of them. When you decide that something is a priority, you decide that you will invest in it. And I got a little bit ahead of myself. These things are priorities because they are not negotiable. They are non-negotiable. So on your worksheet where it says blank versus non-negotiable, these things are not negotiable. They're non-negotiable. When you treat them as a non-negotiable, that's because they're important. And ultimately, you invest in them. When I talk about investing, I have a brief story for you. With my Bikram yoga this last time around, I'm doing a 30-day challenge right now. I'm at the tail end. I decided that I was just going to spend about probably 3 times more than I would spend in yoga prep. Why? Because you have to have towels, you have to have the exercise clothes, you have to have things to shower with so you can be prepared to go out into the day and not be funky with sweat from 105 degrees and humidity, right? You got to have the foods that you need in order to not fall out, and all that requires money. All of that requires an investment of time and energy. And most of the time I would do it throughout the challenge. This time I decided to do it up front. It made all the difference in the world. It was important to me, so even though it felt a little bit uncomfortable swiping my credit card to get 10 extra towels and 10 extra sets of clothes so I didn't have to wash midweek, my life is much better for it. All right, let's experiment. This is all about treating your fundamentals when they're in action, seeing them as an experiment. Why? Because that takes the pressure off. You don't want to feel like if you don't do one thing today that you're going to drop off of the edge of the earth, because that sets you up to fail automatically. We're experimenting, we're learning, we're being mindful and aware. What I have below here is what we call a hypothesis statement. And the hypothesis statement, all right, you're picking one of your non-negotiable fundamentals and completing it. If I blank every day, then I will feel what? So take one of your fundamentals that you pointed out, that was the top one, and consider, if I do that every single day, then I will feel how? Not going to be able to give this as much time as I'd like, but hold that. Hold that in your thoughts and keep on developing the answers to that. When we talk about doing it every day, I got to tell you, one of the pitfalls to doing it every day is that most people try to decide to do it every day. Can't do that. Why? Because of a thing called decision fatigue. You can't make decisions over and over again. You only have that as a muscle that has so much power and has so much strength. You got to set it and forget it in terms of the decision. You got to decide on Monday and live that decision for the week. And then if you want to check in and recalibrate, you do that at the end of the week or whatever time period you've picked to do it. Alrighty, we're going to talk about this very briefly. This quote says, "The quickest path from failure to success is honesty." And that was something that I discovered in my writing practice, my 1,000 words a day, and that I posted in one of the email blasts that I sent out to Presidential Purpose. What happens when you don't show up every day? Say you try to decide to do something like me with 5 a.m. yoga. Sometimes it gets hard, and I decide, I don't want to go to the 5 a.m. yoga class. How do I get back to success? I get there with honesty. I ask myself the questions that just get me to the heart of what happened. What went on? What caused me to not be able to go down the path that I wanted to? Another question that you ask yourself when you're honest is, what's my failure protocol? This was another thing that I came across in my writing practice. You know, I decided I failed one day on one of my fundamentals, and I said, you know what? This attitude of defeat that I feel after failing, it's not going to work. It is not going to work anymore. Presidents have protocols for everything. I've got to have some steps of how I want to fail. How do I want to show up when I fail? If I get too defeated or feel too guilty, it's going to last in a way that makes me not want to get back up on the horse. And that's what the fundamentals are about. You get the consistency that you can get in, and when you fall off, you get back on the horse as soon as possible. We'll have more about the failure protocol in the step-by-step guide because it's really, really key. All right, here's some of your objections. You don't have energy. You don't have time. Everyone says this. There's one simple key thing to this, and that's that the fundamentals are your generating source. Your fundamentals generate time, and they generate energy. It's hard to think about this in the moment, but if you make the decision to experiment, you'll find that if you go back to the fundamentals when you don't have the energy and the time, it's key. All right, we talked about the reflection. What went right, what went wrong. That's in the fundamentals and the failure protocol. This experimenting frame of mind that I have here, and it really is a cycle, is something that's key as well. You refine, identify, prioritize, experiment, and reflect. And you keep doing it until you get it right or you get it better. And sometimes it might change over time, and that's fine, but you're always aware and you're becoming an expert and you know how to fine-tune. All right, the last part that I'm going to share with you is just about mastering the fundamentals. How do we take it from a to-do list item to a full-blown habit? To-do list requires the energy, it requires the thought. The habit, you don't require anything. Your body knows. It has that memory, and it just shows up during the fundamentals. Well, it happens over time. It happens with consistency. And I'm going to share one quote from you with some of the masters, and I have some people listed here who practice a daily practice every day. And I'm going to share one from James Altucher for you, and these are his results when he does what he calls the daily practice. And this is a quote from his blog. He said within about 1 month, I noticed coincidences would start to happen. People started to smile at me more. I'd start to feel lucky. Within 3 months, the ideas would really start flowing to the point where I felt an overwhelming urge to execute ideas. Within 6 months, good ideas start flowing. I began executing them, and everyone around me would want to help me put things together. Within a year, my life was always completely different, 100% upside down from the year before. More money, more luck, health, etc. And then I get lazy, and I'd stop the practice, and everything falls apart again. But now, I'm trying to do it every day. It's hard to do all this every day. Nobody is perfect. I don't know if I'll do any of these things today or all of them, but I do know that when I do it, it works. These are the keys. I'm trying to master it, and my word for the day, not for the day, but for the year, as Teresa taught me in her Launch Your Legacy course that was fantastic, is synergy. I'm trying to take all these things that I've done over time, these individual things, and bring them together in the same space and see what they do when they come together. I don't know if you guys remember Captain Planet, but he brought together earth, wind, fire, heart, water. Teresa, I'm sure I forgot one, but that created something that was bigger than all of those individual parts, which was Captain Planet. So now I'm going to hand the mic over to Teresa, and she's going to talk about what she's done to master the fundamentals. She's inspired me so much with her conversation with them. I thank you for your time. I hope this has been useful. And I'm going to hand over the mic to Teresa so she tells us about her secret sauce.
Thank you. The comments are, "You're very sharp, Jordan."
Thank you.
There's cheers and applause happening. Let me switch it back. Oops, one moment, please. This control panel. All right, 1 second. I hope you guys can see my screen. I've lost my control panel, so give me 1 second.
I do see your screen.
Can you see the control panel?
I can. Well, I think
okay.
That's my control button.
We're back. All right. All right. Doug says, "Please hold." Exactly. Max has learned a lot. Lots of thanks. Lots of gratitude. So again, who must we become? And the story I wanted to tell you, I know we've got 5 minutes left, so we're going to keep it moving. Who must I become? When I was thinking about being the author, speaker, and the coach, right? There was a day where over a couple years where I'd been rocking my fundamentals every day. And I went and did a free talk, a free workshop for the MBA association that I'm a part of. And it was 3 hours, and the talk was on how to start and grow your side hustle. And some friends of mine who are very close to me know, like, okay, Teresa gets up every day and she does her fundamentals. And my fundamentals include meditation, prayer time, doing a devotional, staying hydrated, exercising, eating well, creating, laughing, as well as being grateful, right? And consistency is key. But when we talked about these non-negotiable fundamentals, my non-negotiable fundies include the meditation, the prayer, the devotionals, staying hydrated and exercising, even if it's just a walk, right? So I got up that morning. It was a 3-hour workshop, definitely needing to show up as the highest version of myself, to bring the energy for 3 hours, to present, to change lives, to inspire. And I got up in the morning. I did my meditation. I did my prayer. I did my devotional. I hit the pavement. I went for a run. I drank my water. I had a green smoothie, ate breakfast well, got to the National Entrepreneur Center at 9 a.m. Actually, it's like 8:30 a.m. And my friend who was coming to hear me present looked at me and she asked me, she said, "Just be honest, did you go for a run today?" And all I said was, "Duh." Like, I was almost offended. Like, I've been doing this every day because these are my fundamentals. And the beautiful thing about doing all that was I felt so strong. I felt so grounded. And I felt just like completely unstoppable. And How many of you guys have ever shown up like that and presented or did something and you know you just crushed it? Like, just let me know in the chat box. Like, when you've had that moment where you were like, yes, like, I did my best. I know I did my best. These people, yep, Candace is saying, yep, yes, I did my best. Oh, yeah, like, this is an unmistakable feeling. And the funny thing about that, even though this, yep, Doug was talking about the auto show, like, even though I knew it, I knew that I had discovered the key to success being the fundamentals when after I did that presentation, a woman came up to me and said, I'm hosting a women's conference and I want you to be one of the speakers. And I said, sure, we can talk about that. And from that moment on, it was like, yes, this is it. I know if I do these things on a consistent basis, I am going to get what I really, really, really want. And it's happened over and over and over again. And again, it goes back to the whole thing about the feelings following the actions. It's not the other way around. And I can tell you there are days when I get up and I don't feel like going for a run or I don't feel like getting out there and moving. But every time, it never fails. I always feel better. And when I don't do my fundamentals or when things are out of whack, I do not beat myself up, but I definitely pay attention to, okay, I'm not really feeling as the best version of myself. This is not a good representation of who I am, or there's no way I'm going to leave a legacy I'm going to be proud of if I show up like this. So we're gentle with ourselves. We course correct because at the end of the day, everything affects everything else. It's my favorite Jim Rohn quote. So if you get up and you do the things that you know you need to do on a daily basis, the rest will take care of itself. Whatever your dream is, whatever your legacy is that you want to leave, when you rock your fundamentals consistently, good things will happen because good things always happen to people who feel good, and your fundamentals are going to make you feel good. So with that, Jordan and I want to thank you so much for being here tonight, and now you're probably wondering, well, now what? You talked about, oh, there's an alarm. Oh, okay, let me go faster. We talked about the first quarter, what we were going to do in terms of these free webinars. I hope you guys are finding these extremely useful. In January, we talked about how to set goals. In February, Jordan and I just talked about your fundamentals. And in March, we changed it up. For those of you who were on last time, we said we were going to talk about facing your fear and taking massive action. But we are going to send out a survey at the end of tonight's webinar, and we really want your feedback. And one of the pieces of feedback that we got was somebody wanted to learn how to reinvent yourself. So next month in March, my friend JG, yep, Angelina says, nice, exactly. We are going to be talking about how to reinvent yourself. So Jason Goldberg and I are going to have some fun talking about this topic, teaching you guys how to reinvent yourself, because you can actually reinvent yourself every single day in a way that aligns with who you want to be, how you show up in the world, whether you're living your presidential purpose or leaving your legacy, or Max says it sounds very fitting. It is awesome. And just like last time, please mark your calendars. The next webinar will be on Monday, March 3rd. The free webinars are always going to be the first Monday of the month at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. You'll continue to get updates from the Her Life, Her Legacy family. And for those of you who don't know, many of you do because you're a part of it, there's an opportunity for you to join our awesome community dubbed the Live Your Legacy Inner Circle, where once a week we get together. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, every Monday night until we come up to the top of the month with the webinar, we have a group coaching call that's also kind of like a mastermind. So whatever you have that's going on, Angelina says, awesome, thanks, T and Jordan. You can come to that call with your questions, get all your questions answered. You can connect in community. We've got about 16 inspired people in this group that are definitely living their legacy. They share their goals, they ask questions, they network, they support each other. They get weekly wisdom from me, which I don't share anywhere else. So once a week they get a special audio that kind of gears them up for the week. And a member spotlight. So I'm going to embarrass Stephanie right now briefly, and Stephanie had a killer month in the month of January. And this little example, and then we're going to go because I know the alarm went off, is so powerful about the power of community and coming together and supporting each other on our journey. And Stephanie said when she joined the group that her goal was that she actually wanted to, yeah, she's saying, oh, geez. Yes, it's okay, Stephanie. Don't worry. She said that she wanted to launch her blog and start her coaching business by the end of 2014. And if you never want to talk to me again, Stephanie, because I'm putting your business out there, I understand. But in the inner circle, we got together one Monday night, connected in community, came together, everybody participated, and no joke, she said, you're getting cheers and applause. Go Stephanie, says Doug, right? This is awesome. And in less than a month, I tell you, she's moved that completion date up to the first quarter, and most likely she's going to launch her website, as well as she's already launched her coaching practice within the first 2 months of the year. So that is the power of connecting in community. That is the power of being a part of the inner circle. And the investment, as Jordan said, we have to invest in ourselves is nominal. We're talking only, come on, $25 a month. So if this is something that you're interested in, when you get the email with the survey, because we really, really, really want your feedback, and we totally take it to heart. Like we said, this community is here to serve you. Her Life, Her Legacy is here to give you exactly what you need. Doug says, that's it. What a deal. Exactly. So if you're interested in the inner circle, you'll get an email with a link to the survey, and then there'll also be a link if you want to join the inner circle. But awesome things are happening in that group. People are making huge moves, and you know, if you want to continue to hang out with myself and people like Jordan and Stephanie and Max, who's on here, I know there's some gentlemen who are in the group, which is pretty exciting. You're also not excluded because, yes, it's Her Life, Her Legacy, but we don't discriminate. So next steps, please, please, please check your email in a few moments. The Survey Monkey, that is the most important piece to us here at Her Life, Her Legacy. We absolutely want to give you exactly what you need so you can live your legacy today, so you can leave your legacy tomorrow. We take that feedback to heart. And like we said, if there's something you want to learn how to do, we will build a webinar around it. We will get the right people on the line so you can learn from some of the best thinkers and facilitators out there. I hope you enjoyed Jordan. She is a genius. She is fantastic, and she totally just broke down those fundamentals. So I'm going to ask if there are any questions. I know we ran over about 5 minutes, and if you have any questions, please let me know now. If you can't talk, and I'm so embarrassed at this point in time, it looks like Christine has her hand up. I don't know. Christine, can you hear me? I'm going to actually put you on the mic if you still have a question. Do you still have a question? Are you there, Christine? All right, let's see. I don't know if she can. Questions from Christine. Oh, her mic doesn't work. Did you have a question? Your hand was actually up, and how this GoToWebinar is set up, I couldn't see it. So we'd love to take any questions right now from anybody. All right, question. What about the non-best part of ourselves? It deserves love too. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I'm trying to think of a personal example really quickly. Yeah, like, go ahead, Jordan.
I was just going to say that's how the failure protocol was born. I had failed that day, and then I decided, okay, let me think about what happened. And I gave myself some space and time that I otherwise wouldn't have had. And one of the best blog posts that I've ever written was born out of that, you know, and it's not about your perfect self. It's about the best version of your human self, which, of course, includes all of us. So right. I couldn't agree more.
She actually said she thought she meant to hit the hand as like applause, not raising her hand for a question. But I would applaud, like, you know, loving the not so fun parts of ourselves too. Like, you know, Doug knows, he's here with me locally. Like, I really don't have anything to say until I get my lunch and and kind of recharge, just because I know myself. And that's the beauty of that, you know, infamous quote from Socrates, like, you have to know, yeah, at 11:30 a.m., don't talk to tea. That's what Doug says. but you have to know yourself, because a lot of times we're in situations where it's very stressful. And he says 12:05, she's great. It's true. Like, if there are a lot of things going on, like, I know I need to take a time out. I need to go back, nurture myself. Like, even before this webinar, there is a series of things that I did to prepare to show up as the best version of myself. So it's not just like, oh, I got to do this every morning. There are things before really important interactions. If I'm going to show up, if Jordan's going to show up to really serve, there are things that we need to do. Like, I sat and jumped on this like stability ball for maybe like 5 minutes. Max knows about that. It's a technique that I learned, but there are things that each of you guys are going to have an awesome time exploring what really sets you up for success. So with that, we've gone over for 8 minutes. I hope you guys really, really enjoyed this. Please check your email. We appreciate all the feedback and take it to heart, and whatever it is that you want to learn about. We've got 7 webinars to go. Let us know what it is, and we will build some content around that to truly serve you guys. So with that, like I always say, remember that your life is your message, and how you live will determine your legacy. We will see you next month, or in the circle, or in the inner circle, and take a listen out to tomorrow's podcast. It's been awesome serving you guys. Have a great night. Thanks, Jordan.
Good night. Thank you.